where we slice through the best Reddit tales just for you. Let's dive right into the first story. The first one is the Tittle story, and it starts like this. I never thought I'd be staring down the barrel of a police officer's gun on my own front lawn, all because of a ridiculous misunderstanding with a homeowners association I didn't even belong to. But there I was, heart pounding, hands raised, trying to explain that this was all just one big mistake. Let me back up a bit. My name's Mike Thompson, and I'd recently moved into a beautiful old farmhouse on the outskirts of town. It was my dream home, a place with character, history, and most importantly, no nosy neighbors telling me what color to paint my shutters or how tall my grass could grow. The property sat on 5 acres of land, bordered on one side by a newer housing development called Maple Grove Estates. When I bought the place, my realtor had mentioned that the developer had tried to buy my land a few years back, hoping to expand their cookie-cutter community. The previous owner had refused, and I was grateful for that. I loved the idea of having my own little oasis, free from the constraints of suburban living. For the first few months, everything was perfect. I spent my weekends fixing up the old barn, planting a vegetable garden, and generally enjoying the peace and quiet of country life. But then came the letter that would turn my tranquil existence upside down. It arrived on a Tuesday, official-looking and ominous. The return address read Maple Grove Estates Homeowners Association. Puzzled, I tore it open and began to read. Dear resident, it has come to our attention that your property is in violation of several Maple Grove Estates Homeowners Association bylaws. Specifically, unapproved exterior paint color, Section 3.2 unmowed lawn exceeding 4 inches in height, Section 5.1 unauthorized structures, barn, visible from the street, Section 7.4 livestock on residential property, Section 8.2. You have 30 days from the receipt of this notice to remedy these violations or face fines of $100 per day per violation. Failure to comply may result in legal action. Sincerely, Karen Bradshaw, President, Maple Grove Estates Homeowners Association. I stared at the letter in disbelief, then burst out laughing. Clearly, there had been some kind of mistake. My property wasn't part of Maple Grove Estates. It predated the development by at least a century. I figured a quick phone call would clear everything up. Boy, was I wrong? The next day, I called the number listed on the letter. A clipped, efficient voice answered, Maple Grove Estates Homeowners Association. This is Karen speaking. Hi Karen, this is Mike Thompson. I received a letter about some supposed violations, but there's been a misunderstanding. My property isn't part of your homeowners association. There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Karen spoke again, her voice had taken on a condescending tone. Mr. Thompson, all properties within the Maple Grove Estates boundaries are subject to homeowners association regulations. There are no exceptions. I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. I understand that's your policy, but my property isn't within your boundaries. I own the old Anderson farmhouse on County Road 7. It's a separate parcel. Mr. Thompson, Karen said, her voice dripping with false patience, I have the homeowners association map right in front of me. Your property is clearly marked as Lot 37 of Maple Grove Estates. Now, about those violations. Hold on, I interrupted. There's been a mistake with your map. My house has been here for over 100 years. It's not part of your development. I could practically hear Karen's eyes rolling through the phone. Sir, I can assure you that our records are accurate. Now, as I was saying, you have 30 days to address the violations listed in the letter. If you need recommendations for approved paint colors or landscaping services, I'd be happy to provide them. My patience was wearing thin. Karen, listen to me. I am not a member of your homeowners association. I don't need your recommendations, and I'm not going to make any changes to my property based on your rules. Please remove me from your mailing list. Mr. Thompson, Karen's voice had turned icy. I'm going to overlook your rudeness this one time, but I want to make it very clear that continued non-compliance will result in fines and potential legal action. I suggest you review our bylaws and take the necessary steps to bring your property into compliance. Good day. Good day. Before I could respond, she hung up. I stared at the phone in disbelief. What kind of power-tripping lunatic was I dealing with? Over the next few weeks, I tried everything I could think of to resolve the situation. I sent certified letters explaining the mistake, complete with copies of my deed and property records. I left voicemails for Karen and other homeowners association board members. I even tried to attend one of their monthly meetings, only to be turned away at the door because I wasn't a member in good standing. Meanwhile, the violation notices kept coming, each one more strongly worded than the last, threatening legal action if I didn't comply. I started to worry that this could escalate into something serious if I didn't find a way to make them understand. That's when I decided to take matters into my own hands. I spent a weekend creating a large sign and erected it at the edge of my property, facing the Maple Grove Estates entrance. In big, bold letters, it read, Attention Maple Grove Estates Homeowners Association. This property is not part of your development. Please stop sending violation notices. Trespassers will be prosecuted. I figured that would get the message across, and for a while, it seemed to work. The letters stopped coming, and I thought maybe, just maybe, they had finally realized their mistake. But then came the knock on my door that would change everything. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, and I was in the middle of repainting my front porch, ironically, in a shade of blue that I'm sure would have given Karen an aneurysm. I heard a car pull up and looked up to see a sleek BMW parking in my driveway. A woman in her mid-50s, perfectly coiffed and dressed like she was headed to a country club luncheon, stepped out and marched towards me with purpose. I had a sinking feeling I knew exactly who this was. "Mr. Thompson?" she called out as she approached. "I'm Karen Bradshaw, president of the Maple Grove Estates Homeowners Association. We need to talk." I set down my paintbrush and wiped my hands on my jeans. "Mrs. Bradshaw, I've been trying to reach you for weeks. There's been a misunderstanding." She cut me off with a wave of her hand. "The only misunderstanding here is your blatant disregard for our community standards. That sign of yours is a clear violation of Section 4.3 of our bylaws, not to mention an eyesore. I'm here to inform you that the board has voted to begin legal proceedings if you don't remove it and address the other violations immediately." I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. "Mrs. Bradshaw, I appreciate you coming out here in person, but as I've tried to explain multiple times, my property is not part of Maple Grove Estates. I'm not a member of your homeowners association, and your rules don't apply to me." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Thompson, I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing, but it stops now. Every property in this area is part of our association. There are no exceptions." "Except for mine," I insisted. "This house has been here for over a century. It's a separate parcel. I have the deed and property records to prove it." "Those records are obviously incorrect," Karen snapped. "Our development plans clearly show this lot as part of Maple Grove Estates. Now, I'm willing to be reasonable. If you remove that atrocious sign and submit plans for bringing your property into compliance within the next 48 hours, we can avoid taking this to court." I could feel my temper rising. "Mrs. Bradshaw, I'm not removing anything. This is my property, and I'll do with it as I please. Now, I'm asking you politely to leave. You're trespassing." Karen's face flushed red. "How dare you? I am an elected official of this community, and I will not be spoken to in this manner. You have 48 hours, Mr. Thompson. After that, you'll be hearing from our lawyers." She spun on her heel and stormed back to her car. As she peeled out of my driveway, I couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. I knew I was in the right, but I also knew that homeowners associations could be notoriously aggressive in enforcing their rules. I decided it was time to seek some legal advice of my own. The following Monday, I met with Sarah Chen, a local attorney who specialized in property disputes. I brought along all my documentation, deed, property records, tax assessments, and the various notices from the HOA Homeowners Association. Sarah reviewed everything carefully, her brow furrowing as she read through the Homeowners Association's letters. Finally, she looked up at me. "Well, Mr. Thompson, the good news is that you're absolutely right. Your property is not part of Maple Grove Estates. It's a separate parcel that predates the development." I let out a sigh of relief. "That's great. So how do we make the Homeowners Association understand that?" Sarah's expression turned grim. "That's the bad news. Based on these letters, it seems the Homeowners Association is operating under the belief that they have authority over your property. They may have incorrect maps or records that show your land as part of their development. Correcting this misunderstanding could be challenging." "Challenging how?" I asked, feeling my stomach knot up. "Well, homeowners associations can be very aggressive in enforcing what they believe to be their rights," Sarah explained. "They might try to file a lawsuit to force compliance, or even attempt to place a lien on your property for unpaid fines. It's all completely baseless, of course, but it could still cause you a lot of headaches." I slumped in my chair. "So what do we do?" Sarah thought for a moment. "I think our best bet is to be proactive. I'll draft a cease and desist letter outlining the legal facts of your property ownership and demanding they stop all attempts to enforce their rules on your land. We'll send that certified mail to the Homeowners Association Board and their legal counsel, if they have one." "And if that doesn't work?" I asked. "Then we may need to file for a declaratory judgment," Sarah said. "That's where we ask a court to officially declare that your property is not subject to the HOA Homeowners Association's authority. It's a bit of a nuclear option, but it might be necessary if they refuse to see reason." I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. At least I had a plan now, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. As it turned out, I was right to be worried. The cease and desist letter seemed to only enrage the Homeowners Association further. They responded with their own letter, drafted by their lawyer, insisting that my property was indeed part of Maple Grove Estates, and threatening to sue me for malicious interference with Homeowners Association operations. Things escalated quickly after that. I started noticing cars driving by my house slowly, the occupants clearly taking photos or videos. My neighbors in Maple Grove Estates, who had previously been friendly, now avoided eye contact when I waved hello. One day, I even caught a couple of guys in Maple Grove Estates security shirts poking around the edge of my property. When I confronted them, they claimed they were just checking the perimeter for safety issues. The final straw came about a month after my meeting with Sarah. I was working from home that day on a conference call with some important clients, When I heard a commotion outside, I excused myself from the call and went to investigate. What I saw made my blood run cold. There, parked in my driveway, were two police cruisers. Karen Bradshaw was standing next to one of them, gesticulating wildly as she talked to an officer. A small crowd of neighbors had gathered at the edge of my property, watching the scene unfold. As I stepped out onto my porch, Karen spotted me and pointed dramatically. "There he is, officers. That's the man who's been harassing our community and refusing to comply with our regulations." The two officers approached me, their expressions serious. "Sir," one of them said, "we've received complaints about your refusal to comply with Homeowners Association regulations and alleged threats against Homeowners Association officials. We're going to need you to come with us to answer some questions." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Officers, there's been a huge misunderstanding. I'm not a member of their Homeowners Association. My property isn't part of their development." The second officer frowned. "Sir, we have documentation from the Homeowners Association showing that your property is within their jurisdiction. If you have evidence to the contrary, you can present it at the station." I felt a surge of panic. This couldn't be happening. "Please, just let me get my property records. They'll show that this is all a mistake." "I'm afraid we can't do that, sir," the first officer said, his hand moving to rest on his holster. "We need you to come with us now. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back." That's when something in me snapped. All the frustration, all the stress of the past few months came boiling to the surface. "No," I said, taking a step back. "I'm not going anywhere. This is my property, and I haven't done anything wrong. You can't arrest me based on the word of some power-hungry Homeowners Association president." I saw the officers exchange a glance, their postures tensing. "Sir, please calm down," one of them said, his voice taking on a harder edge. "Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." But I was beyond reason at that point. I turned and bolted back into my house, slamming the door behind me. I could hear shouts from outside, the sound of heavy footsteps on my porch. "Mr. Thompson?" one of the officers called through the door. "Come out with your hands up. Don't make this worse for yourself." My mind was racing. I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, but I also knew that running from the police was a terrible idea. I needed to defuse this situation, and fast. Taking a deep breath, I called out, "Officers, please. I'm not resisting. I just need a moment to collect my documents. They'll prove that this is all a misunderstanding." There was a pause, then one of the officers responded, "All right, Mr. Thompson, you have 2 minutes to come out with your hands visible. Any sudden movements, and we'll have to use force. Do you understand?" "Yes, I understand," I replied, my heart pounding. I rushed to my office, grabbing the folder where I kept all my property documents. As I headed back to the front door, I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. I looked wild-eyed and disheveled, my paint-stained clothes adding to the image of a madman. No wonder the police were on edge. Taking another deep breath to steady myself, I slowly opened the front door. "I'm coming out," I called. "I have documents in my hand. Please don't shoot." I stepped onto the porch, my hands raised, the folder clearly visible. The two officers had their weapons drawn, pointed at me. Behind them, I could see Karen smirking triumphantly, while the gathered neighbors watched in shocked silence. "Put the folder on the ground and step away from it," one of the officers commanded. I complied, carefully setting the folder down and taking a few steps back. The officers approached cautiously, one keeping his weapon trained on me while the other picked up the folder. "Officers, please," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Those documents will show that my property is not part of Maple Grove Estates. This has all been a terrible mistake." The officer with the folder began flipping through the papers, his brow furrowing as he read. After what felt like an eternity, he looked up at his partner. "We might have a problem here." The other officer frowned. "What do you mean?" "These property records and tax assessments all show this land as a separate parcel, predating the Maple Grove development," the first officer explained. He turned to Karen, who was still standing by the police cruiser. "Ma'am, can you come here for a moment?" Karen strutted over, looking smug. "Officers, I hope you're not buying into his lies. Our Homeowners Association records clearly show." The officer cut her off. "Ma'am, these appear to be official county records showing that this property is not part of your development. Can you explain why you told us it was?" Karen's smug expression faltered. "What? That's impossible. Our development plans clearly show this lot as part of Maple Grove Estates." "Development plans aren't the same as legal property records, ma'am," the officer said, his tone growing stern. "Did you verify the actual property boundaries before making these complaints?" Karen's face flushed red. Well, I assumed our plans were accurate, but surely that doesn't change the fact that he's been violating our community standards and harassing our board members." The second officer, who had lowered his weapon, spoke up. "Ma'am, if his property isn't part of your homeowners association, then your rules don't apply to him. And from what we can see, the only harassment has been coming from your organization." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Finally, someone was listening to reason. "Officers," I said, "I've been trying to explain this to Mrs. Bradshaw and the Homeowners Association for months. I've sent them copies of these documents, but they've ignored them and continued to threaten me with fines and legal action." The officers exchanged a look, then the one holding my documents turned to me. "Mr. Thompson, we owe you an apology. It seems we were given incorrect information when we were called out here." "That's an understatement," I muttered, then quickly added, "but I understand you were just doing your job. I appreciate you taking the time to review my documents." Karen, however, wasn't ready to give up. "This is ridiculous. He can't just opt out of our homeowners association. Every property in this area is subject to our rules." The first officer turned to her, his patience clearly wearing thin. "Ma'am, I'm going to say this one more time. According to these legal documents, Mr. Thompson's property is not part of your development. Your homeowners association has no authority over his land. Now, I strongly suggest you leave his property immediately before we have to consider this trespassing." Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She looked around at the gathered neighbors, perhaps hoping for some support, but found only shocked and embarrassed faces. Finally, she spun on her heel and stormed back to her car, slamming the door as she got in. As Karen's car peeled out of my driveway, the officers turned back to me. "Mr. Thompson," one said, "again, we apologize for this misunderstanding. Do you want to press charges for harassment or trespassing?" I thought about it for a moment. Part of me wanted to see Karen face consequences for her actions, but ultimately, I just wanted this whole ordeal to be over. "No," I sighed. "I don't think that's necessary. I just want to be left alone." The officer nodded. "Understood? We'll make sure to update our records to reflect the correct status of your property. If you have any more trouble with the Homeowners Association, don't hesitate to call us." As the police left, I noticed that most of the neighbors were still lingering at the edge of my property, whispering among themselves. I decided it was time to clear the air once and for all. "Folks," I called out, "I know there's been a lot of confusion about my property. I want you all to know that I have nothing against Maple Grove Estates or any of you. My land just isn't part of your development, which means your Homeowners Association rules don't apply here. I hope we can move past this and be good neighbors." There was a moment of awkward silence. Then one of the neighbors, a middle-aged man I recognized as Tom from down the street, stepped forward. "Mike, we owe you an apology. We should have asked more questions instead of just taking Karen's word for everything. Is there anything we can do to make this right?" I was touched by the gesture. "Thanks, Tom. Honestly, all I want is to be able to enjoy my property in peace. Maybe we could organize a neighborhood barbecue or something? Get to know each other properly without all this homeowners association drama." Tom grinned. "That sounds like a great idea. And hey, maybe you could give us some tips on how to stand up to the homeowners association. Some of their rules are pretty ridiculous." As the neighbors laughed and started to disperse, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It seemed like this nightmare might finally be over. Over the next few weeks, things started to settle down. The violation notices stopped coming, and I didn't see any more suspicious cars driving by my house. I did, however, notice a lot more activity at the Maple Grove Estates Community Center. It turned out that my stand against the Homeowners Association had inspired some of the residents to start questioning other aspects of how their community was being run. About a month after the incident with the police, I received an unexpected visitor. It was Tom, the neighbor who had spoken up at the end of the confrontation. "Hey Mike," he said as I opened the door. "Got a minute to chat?" I invited him in, curious about what brought him over. As we sat in my living room, Tom got straight to the point. "So, you might have heard that we had a special Homeowners Association meeting last week," he began. "Long story short, Karen's out. We elected a new board and, well, I'm the new president." I raised an eyebrow. "Congratulations, I think? That sounds like it could be a tough job." Tom chuckled. "Yeah, it's going to be a challenge, but that's actually why I'm here. We're trying to rebuild some bridges, and I was hoping you might be willing to help us out." "Me?" I asked, surprised. "How could I help?" "Well," Tom explained, "we're revising a lot of our policies, trying to make them more reasonable. And we realize that your property, being so close but not part of our homeowners association, could be a good test case. We were wondering if you'd be willing to act as a kind of informal consultant. Help us figure out what rules actually make sense and which ones are just, well, Karen-style power trips." I had to admit, I was intrigued by the idea. "That's an interesting proposition, Tom, but I hope you understand if I'm a bit wary of getting involved with homeowners association business after everything that's happened." Tom nodded. "Absolutely, and I wouldn't blame you if you told me to take a hike. But I want you to know that we're serious about changing things. We even hired a new lawyer who's helping us clean up our legal documents and make sure we're not overstepping our bounds." I thought about it for a moment. On one hand, I had been looking forward to just living my life without any homeowners association drama. On the other hand, this could be an opportunity to help create a more reasonable system for my neighbors. "All right," I said finally. "I'm willing to give it a shot. But I want to be clear, I'm not joining the homeowners association, and any advice I give is just that. Advice? You guys make the final decisions." Tom grinned and stuck out his hand. "Understood? And thanks, Mike. I think this could be the start of something really good for our community." As I shook Tom's hand, I couldn't help but feel a sense of irony. After months of fighting to keep the Homeowners Association out of my life, here I was, voluntarily getting involved. But maybe this was a chance to turn a negative experience into something positive. Over the next few months, I found myself attending informal meetings with Tom and some of the other new board members. We discussed everything from lawn maintenance standards to architectural review processes. I shared my perspective as an outsider, often playing devil's advocate to help them see how their rules might impact residents. To my surprise, I actually enjoyed the process. It was satisfying to see the genuine effort being made to create fair and reasonable guidelines. We even worked on a new system for handling disputes between the homeowners association and residents, ensuring that homeowners had a clear path to appeal decisions they felt were unfair. As for Karen, I heard through the grapevine that she had put her house up for sale and was moving to a gated community in another state. Part of me felt a twinge of sympathy for her. It couldn't be easy to face your neighbors after such a public humiliation. But mostly, I was just relieved that her reign of homeowners association terror was over. One sunny Saturday about 6 months after the police incident, we finally had that neighborhood barbecue I had suggested. My sprawling front lawn became the venue, with residents from both Maple Grove Estates and the surrounding non-homeowners association properties mingling freely. As I stood by the grill, flipping burgers and chatting with my neighbors, I couldn't help but marvel at how things had turned out. What had started as a nightmare of homeowners association overreach had somehow transformed into a catalyst for positive change in the community. Tom sidled up to me, a cold beer in hand. "You know, Mike," he said, gesturing at the happy crowd, "none of this would have happened if you hadn't stood your ground. You really changed things around here." I shrugged, feeling a bit embarrassed by the praise. I was just trying to protect my own property. I never expected all of this. "Well, intended or not, you made a difference," Tom insisted. "Oh, and by the way, I've been meaning to ask you, that blue you used on your porch? It looks great. Any chance you could let me know the brand and color? I'm thinking of repainting my place, and I really like that shade." I laughed, remembering how that same blue had once been deemed an unapproved exterior paint color by the old Homeowners Association regime. "Sure thing, Tom. I'd be happy to share. Just don't tell me I need to submit a color swatch for approval." As Tom chuckled and wandered off to mingle, I looked out over my property, my beautiful old farmhouse, the barn I'd worked so hard to restore, the thriving vegetable garden, and now, a lawn full of happy neighbors. I thought about how close I'd come to losing all of this to a misguided homeowners association on a power trip. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Grateful that I'd had the courage to stand up for myself. Grateful for neighbors like Tom who were willing to admit mistakes and work towards positive change. And grateful for the simple pleasure of being able to enjoy my home, my way. As I turned back to the grill, I made a silent promise to myself. No matter what challenges came my way in the future, I would always remember this experience. It had taught me the importance of standing up for what's right, the power of community, and the value of turning conflicts into opportunities for growth. And who knows, maybe one day I'd write all this down, the story of how an homeowners association's misguided attempt to control my property led to a stronger, more united neighborhood. For now though, I had burgers to flip and neighbors to feed. Life was good, and I intended to enjoy every moment of it, free from homeowners association interference. Are you hungry for more slices of stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to never miss out on any videos. See you tomorrow at Story Slices.